Army of Darkness is the last chapter in the Evil Dead trilogy. The last 2 years in October, we've given you the first two Evil Dead, so it only makes sense that we start off this year's Halloween movie reviews with the third chapter, Army of Darkness. Nate, I'll show my cards right now. This one is my favorite of the Evil Dead trilogy.
Okay.
What about you? Where does it rank in the trilogy for you?
I love this entire trilogy, but I'm actually opposite of you. This is my least favorite in the trilogy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, I still love the movie, but yeah, it's my least favorite.
Yeah. And something I just want to point out before we get into this movie, and something I noticed watching it this last time around, even though this is part of the Evil Dead trilogy, I don't think this is a horror movie, at all.
No,
really. I mean,
no.
this is kind of follows the more line like an action comedy.
Yeah.
And just like there aren't any scary moments. I'll just say that there aren't any like really scary moments. There are a few startling moments, like when the Deadite jumps out of the water in the beginning,
right?
Like stuff like that. But overall, I just have difficulty calling this movie a horror movie. How about you?
No, I agree. I don't think it's necessarily a horror movie, but it does have horror elements. Obviously, all Sam Raimi has horror elements in it.
Right, even his Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, exactly. But what I really dig about this movie is the just the visual aesthetic to it in general. That even though it's not a horror movie, it still has these really cool spooky scenes of like big moons and like the whole windmill scene as well, and the skeletons coming to life, and like all that gives me that sort of like, you know, nighttime graveyard vibe. But no, is it a horror movie? Probably not. They really took a stark direction with this whole thing in comparison to the Evil Dead, the first two Evil Deads.
Yeah. I think that the first Evil Dead was like a horror movie with some comedy in it, and then it balanced the two between horror and comedy with Evil Dead 2. With this one, I feel that it's Ash. Ash is the appeal of this movie. Ash sells this movie, and I think that this is Bruce Campbell's best performance as Ash.
I do too.
And that's why I think this is my favorite of the trilogy. What do you think about Bruce Campbell?
I mean, I love Bruce Campbell in general, but I think this was the formation of Ash as we know him probably forever. You know, he's cocky, he's snarky, he's one-liners, he's the action hero. Somehow he's all of a sudden this really big badass when really not too long before the events of this movie, he was kind of just a college student stuck in a terrible situation.
Right.
And now he's a superhero.
Right, because with all these movies, you know, each movie leads in, or like gives us a little recap of the previous movies. Each movie leads into one another. I mean, you think about this, all this really happens, as far as Ash is concerned, like within the span of a week or two. You know, this entire trilogy of movies. So that is a good observation, like how he becomes this badass, just like through these events, almost like a Sarah Connor kind of transformation.
Right. Yeah, and I think that his character goes through this transformation through acceptance of what he is and where he is, to the point where, in this movie, to me, he just doesn't care. He's like, you know what? Screw all of this. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. I'm pissed off. I'm in a bad situation. And he, like, almost comes into his own.
What do you think about the action in this movie?
One thing that I love about this movie is the old school special effects. I love the practical effects, the makeup, all of that. I like the action. I think that the ending war scene gets a little old for me.
Does.
It's a little long. There's only so much stationary skeletons blowing up that I can watch before I'm kind of bored with it. But all in all, I think that what's great about the action is the injection of comedy to it, which keeps it entertaining and flowing a little bit more. But I have my thoughts on the comedy as well. But what do you think about the action?
I agree with you about the action. The action itself isn't standout, but the comedy infused with the action does keep it entertaining and, you know, does keep the movie going. And as far as the comedy, I really like this movie as far as, like, the comedic elements that it brings into. Like you said with Ash's character, like, this is full Ash. So just every character interaction, every line, every moment, he has some snarky comment. He has like one of those Ash moments. Yeah. And I think it works. What about you?
I think it works about 80% of the time. Okay. There's about 20% of it where I'm like, it's sometimes a little too Three Stoogey to me.
Oh, a little too slapsticky?
Yeah, they lean heavy on the slaps and the pokes and the doinks and all those types of things. A little too much for me at times where I'm like, this is so cartoony, it's ridiculous. But still, for the most part, I do laugh a lot. And yeah, you're right. Like, one of his first lines where he's like, well, look at you, big fancy pants. Like, you know, he's just, all of his lines are normally delivered with a lot of snark and a lot of dramatics and overacting, which is what I expect from Bruce Campbell. So I do like the comedy in this, but I think there's some people that are going to watch and be like, this is stupid.
I think this is, you know, outside of, you know, keeping up with the story and familiarity with the character, I think this is one of, like, the third movies in the trilogy where it's like the first two are absolutely necessary reading before you go in. You know, get a feel of the Evil Dead franchise, because the slapstick humor is pretty prominent in there, especially in the second movie.
Yeah.
But I think with this one, they might have leaned a little too hard, maybe gone a little too extreme with it, even though as a kid I was a big Three Stooges fan, so there are some, like, you know, there's some nostalgic value to it, but I do think they lean a little bit too hard on it.
Yeah, and I think Sam Raimi, you're right about his... It seemed like he had more of a desire to just do action more than horror this time around. You know, he just finished up with Darkman.
And maybe it's because he, like, actually had a budget for this one.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it, and I think that what I wanted, watching this again, I was like, how cool would this be if he actually made it more Evil Dead-like in the medieval setting, you know, have it a little bit more contained, a little bit more scary and horror-esque than this big, huge medieval budget that he had. But I do like the results of it. I think a lot of that attributes also to the entertainment, the action of Sam Raimi's direction. He is just such a creative director. He had so many cool shots, there's one point where someone stabs somebody with a sword and the camera follows the sword all the way down to him catching it to his face. It's like those moments where I'm like, this is entertaining because Sam Raimi can work that camera in ways that most directors can't.
Yeah, he definitely gets very creative with the camera, and that lends itself to you know, taking something that might just be basic generic action, you know, generic direction, and he just adds a different element to it. And it's just something as simple as moving the camera around, or like going, like, you know, like the super zoom in on the face, things like that, you know.
Tracking all the weapons as they go through the air,
POV
like
shots from like inanimate objects, you know. So he definitely, you know, does his magic with the camera that, you know, we see later in his other films, like, you know, when he actually has, you know, a very large budget.
The Spider-Man budget. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there are definitely flashes of those Raimi-isms, like those early Raimi-isms, that I really enjoy. But something that I think that is a strong aspect of this movie is we get 2 ashes at one point in this movie.
Yeah.
The banter, like the banter between the two, you can't deny that. It's entertaining. Like, just like when you think, like, man, I've had too much ash. It's like, nah, there's no such thing.
True, that is probably my favorite moment, especially when the head pops out. Like, that's where those elements come in, where he comes out of the windmill, the big moon, and he's got 2 heads, and he's freaking out over it. I'm like, all right, this is kind of horror-esque.
Right.
But once he finally splits from him, it is cool to see evil Ash, and even when he's leading the army, there's some Ash moments where he's just kind of a bumbling idiot, even though he's like this overlord of dead and evil.
Well, Ash himself is a bumbling idiot,
totally,
too.
Yeah.
So it definitely
most
plays
of the things
well.
work out by accident for him.
Buffs. All right, so with these Halloween movie reviews, we are going to give our standard score of see it or skip it. Is this a movie we recommend you check out this Halloween season? But we're also going to rate it on a 0 to 5 spooky scale, just how scary the movie is. So, Nate, tell me, do you recommend the movie, and what's your rating on the spooky scale?
Well, I love the Evil Dead trilogy. Evil Dead 2 is my favorite horror movie of all time. And, of course, the follow-up, Army of Darkness, is great. Yes, definitely see it. But as you said before, I don't think that it does require you to watch the first and second movie, which I absolutely suggest you do that as well this spooky season. As for the spooky scale, it's not a scary movie. I think there are some jump scares in there. There is some really cool spooky practical makeup and effects. But all in all, I'd give it probably a 1 out of 5 on the spooky scale. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I do recommend this movie, especially if you've seen the first 2 Evil Dead movies. So I will give Army of Darkness a see it. And as far as the spooky scale, I'm going to go a hair below you. I'm going to go 0.5 out of 5. It's just not scary. And I'm not faulting the movie for not being scary. Right. At no point does it try to sell itself as a horror movie and doesn't deliver. It's just that it's just not scary. So to conclude the Evil Dead trilogy, yeah, go ahead, watch this. But if you're like looking for something really spooky this year, I can't say to go to this one.
Yeah.
Buffs. All right, so that's it for our review of Army of Darkness. What did you guys think of the movie? Do you actually find it scary? Please leave a comment down below.
Yeah, we're going to keep these Halloween reviews rolling on until next week, and we have Suspiria. We're doing the review for Suspiria. I've never seen it.
I have, and it's been a while, so it might feel like, watching it all over again for the first time. I'm really looking forward to it.
For sure. So we'll bring you that review next week, but wherever you are, whoever you're with,
watch more movies.